Hello, so this is my January wrap up. I read quite a lot. Firstly, let's hop to past me to talk about my library pick for the month. My library pick for the month this month was Beautiful Redemption by Kimi Garcia and Margaret Stoll. I didn't want to read this, but I felt like I should read it because I wanted to complete the series. Sadly, and this is why I don't like reading series, is because when I get to the end, my reading taste has moved on from that point, and this was very much the case. But I read it anyway. This is it's a teen YA series about they're like witches and wizards, but they're called casters. It's sort of a alternate world, and there's like incubuses, which are vampires and things like that. As series like this go, it's quite good for what it is, but it's not great. And I especially found with this one, being the last in the series, I'm trying to wrap everything up. Everything was very convenient, and I didn't love it. There's not much I can say about this without giving away spoilers, so I'm not going to say much, other than to say I did not love it, and I'm glad to be done with them. Then I read A Dance with Dragons. This is the 6th in the Song of Ice and Fire trilogy series by George R.R. Martin. I'm nearly there. I've got one more book left, and I have to say I've had enough now. I mean, they're big books, and it's all much of the same. It's the first time I've read a sort of sprawling fantasy series, and yeah, I've had enough. It's probably my own fault because I got the series on television for Christmas, and I was watching that alongside reading this, so I was trying to follow two different storylines in the same world, like, two different times, but I couldn't tell you anything that happened in this. It's just all kind of merged together. I'm glad I've read them, and I still enjoy them, but it's getting a bit much for me now, and I'm looking forward to being done with them. Then I read If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things by John McGregor, which was a much more successful read for me. I loved this. It's definitely gone into one of my top books of all time. I've done a full review of this, which I will link down below if you want more detail. Basically, this is it's very experimental in its style. It's very poetic. Basically follows the life of these people on a street, and we get snapshots of everybody's life on that street. We know something terrible has happened, and the whole novel is leading us towards that point. We don't know what that thing is. This is just a spectacular book. It's not everybody's cup of tea, I'm fully aware, but go and check out my full review, and if it sounds like your cup of tea, definitely pick it up. Then I read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. This is a sort of creative self-help book about the idea that creation and ideas are tangible things that they're floating about, and almost that creativity works through us, that it is a tangible thing that we pick up and channel into something. It's quite interesting. It was enjoyable enough. It's very short, literally took me one evening to read. There's not much writing to a page, to be honest. It was good fun. I like books like this every now and again to just perk me up. Ever since reading Patti Smith's Just Kids, I've been craving creative memoirs and things. This was very good. I do enjoy Elizabeth Gilbert. Obviously she wrote Eat, Pray, Love and Committed, but she's got some very good ideas, and there are some moments in this where you think, yes, I wouldn't say it was a blow me away book for me, but it did the job, and I enjoyed it, and it's pretty for anyone creative. Don't have to be writing. It talks about creation as a general thing, so music, anything. Then I read my short story collection for the month, which was The Girl in the Flammable Skirt by Amy Bender, who is the author of The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake, my review for which I will link down below if you want to check that out. Loved that book, loved this book. This was her first short story collection. There are obviously issues in terms of some of the stories were quite forgettable. Some of the stories didn't pack a punch, but it was her first short story collection, and I enjoyed it. Obviously there's a few stories I've tabbed. I think in short story collections I am going to find that there are stories that I don't love as much, but there were stories in this that I really did love, and I also found it very inspiring for my own writing. It gave me a lot of ideas because it's all magical realism, fantastical stuff that goes on, and it's great fun. I would definitely recommend this, especially if anyone's read any of Amy Bender's other works. I just think she's fantastic. I love her writing style so much. Then I read James Joyce's A Portrait of a Young, the Artist as a Young Man. I have wanted to read this so badly ever since I got it, and I have to say it was a slight disappointment for me. My feelings about this book are very mixed. I feel as though James Joyce is undeniably an excellent writer, and there is so much potential for him, and there were sentences that were amazing, but I feel like he tries too hard to be cutting edge almost, and like different and stand out, and I think that really lets him down. This, I hear, is James Joyce's most sort of cohesive work. Obviously Ulysses and Dubliners and things like that he's written as well, which are also, I think, quite heavy going. I found this very difficult to read. I found it very difficult to follow. Although there were parts where I really, really enjoyed the writing, there were parts where I just had no idea what was going on. It just didn't grip me enough to let me follow the plot, almost. Basically, this is a sort of autobiographical book about Joyce's coming to the creative pursuits of his later life. It sort of follows him at school and going on to later education and things. He has a brief spell where he's trying to get involved in the church and everything like that. It's quite an interesting look at life in Ireland. There is that aspect to it, but generally it was just a letdown for me, and it's a bit pretentious, and I think I lowered my score of this because of the fact that I could see that it could have been amazing, and it just tried too hard. I'm very much of the opinion that literature is best simple. It's best straight out, beautiful, and that's it. You don't have to mess around with it to try and make yourself look clever, because it ends up just tarnishing the work a little bit. That's how I felt for this. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. I feel bad. I feel like I should have liked it. And at points, even, I thought I did, but I don't think I did. And that's all. That's all. Then I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I don't know. Everyone loves this book, and I did enjoy it a lot, and I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, because afterwards I was like, do you know what, I feel like that was a special thing. I feel like that's going to be a really comforting book for me, and I think it's one that I'm going to come back to, and it feels like a friend almost, and a hug. But it wasn't as amazing as I was hoping it would be, but, it's still, I don't know, I think it's one of those books that's going to grow with me. Basically, this follows a group of university students who are studying the ancient Greeks in sort of a specialised class almost. So they're quite an elite group. It's about, I think there's 6 of them. And it sort of follows the trials and tribulations of that group. And one of them ends up dying, which we know in the first little bit. It's a prologue that explains that the person has died. So that's not a spoiler, don't worry. And it sort of goes back then to the beginning of their university days and works towards the incident, and we sort of find out why they have killed him and what went on there. It was fun and it was good. I have to say, it's not the thickest of books, but the pages are really heavy and thin. It's a very heavy, it's a nice physical book, but for that reason the pages, it took a long time to get through not many pages. I felt it was quite it took me a while, and I felt as though I could be reading for hours and only get through like 20 pages and think, but I enjoyed it and it was special. The only thing I would say about this, obviously they're an elite group and they're meant to be quite quaint and quirky, and they're sort of outcast from the rest of the university, but I felt almost as though, this is based in America, and I felt almost as though Donna Tartt Englishized her characters to make them seem quaint. And that kind of grated on me, because I just think that is the only thing. One of the characters, Bunny, he's a sort of very old chap, dapper kind of guy, and it just felt as though the only way Donna Tartt could make him unique to the other people at the university was to Englishize him and give him sort of English tropes, and I didn't necessarily like that. There's also tropes of The Great Gatsby in this, and I would say that Bunny reminded me of Gatsby, but the main narrator compared himself to Gatsby at one point, which I didn't agree with. I think Bunny was the Gatsby of this story, but never mind. So there is that trope to it, and obviously the people in The Great Gatsby are very quite Englishized and, Gatsby does sort of say old chap and things like this, but it just kind of grated on me that it's this American view of English people. Anyway, but then, having said that, I watched an interview with Donna Tartt, and she's quite a unique lady. I like her style. She wears suits and things. So yeah, it might just be what she likes. I don't know, but to me it was a bit grating. But it's a good book, and I would definitely recommend it. And I am looking forward to reading more Donna Tartt. Then I actually read my first audiobook. Well, listened to my first audiobook, which was very exciting. This was Tina Fey's Bossy Pants, and I picked a non-fiction book because I wanted to get into non-fiction in audiobook form more. I don't think I would necessarily get on with fiction. I think my mind wanders too much when I'm listening, whereas non-fiction is a bit easier to follow almost for me. I picked Tina Fey's Bossy Pants because it was going around for a while, and I almost thought it would be a bit of a sort of How to Be a Woman by Caitlin Moran kind of fun memoir that you don't necessarily need to know much about the person to enjoy reading the book. I didn't so much sadly find this with Tina Fey's memoir, because I don't know much about her. The most I know from her is Mean Girls, and obviously a little bit about 30 Rock, but I've watched one episode of that and didn't necessarily love it, so I found that did cause problems for me with this audiobook. She did narrate it herself, which was good, and I really enjoyed the experience of reading the audiobook, and I will definitely be doing that more. But for this one, I didn't rate it. I thought it was very much about her career. It wasn't necessarily about stuff that I could relate to, and I think a fan of Tina Fey would have loved this book, but because I went into it hoping that it would be a more generalised memoir, it really wasn't, and it was very much about her career and what she's achieved, and that's great and everything, but it just wasn't for me. And also, to me, I would say that Mean Girls is her biggest thing. I don't know if that's true, it just seems that way to me. That's what I know her for, and I think that's what a lot of people know her for, and she didn't mention that once, which I found quite strange. But anyway, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're a huge fan of Tina Fey. And finally, I read When I Was 5 I Killed Myself by Howard Button. I have a very strange copy of this book. It's like a little German reader. I mean, the blurb is in German. The inside is English, but it's got like little German annotations at the bottom. I don't know why. I just ordered it and it came this way. But anyway, I've read this before. I read this when I was 16, I think, and I loved it. It blew me away. This year I'm going to try and do a reread of a book a month because I really want to get into rereading. I think books that I absolutely love, I need to reread, and also I think it's quite interesting the idea that a book is very different to you at whatever time in your life you read it, which is very true for this one for me. I didn't love it on this reread, and yet it was my favourite book of all time when I was 16 years old and reading it. Basically, this is a French translation. I don't know who it's translated by because it's all in German, so I couldn't tell you. And it's a novel about a little boy who finds himself in a psychiatric centre for something that he did to a young girl. He is 5 years old, or he was 5 years old when the incident takes place. I don't think he is now. The little boy is called Burton, and we get told the story through his own eyes. He writes it on the walls of the quiet room that he gets put in at the centre, and they sort of let him carry on because it's almost like the only way they can get into his head. And it's sweet, and the writing is really nice, but there were some things that irritated me, like the fact that Burton kept seeming to steal his files from the doctor's office, and it was sort of a clumsy way of letting us know what the doctors were diagnosing him as, and also a conversation that was going on between two of the doctors about him and about the treatment of him. There was a bit of a disagreement, and we get to learn all of that, obviously, through Burton stealing all of his files, seemingly, from the doctor's office and writing it on the wall. I don't think that he would be able to steal those files so freely, and I just thought it was a bit clumsy. I think the better way to have done it would have been to have alternate chapters that came from, or were just in the form of letters from the doctors. I think that would have been a better way of doing that, but never mind. That kind of took me out of the story a bit, but it's still good, and there's still good writing, and it's still quite a touching story. and it's quite affecting, and I think if you haven't read it, it's definitely worth it. That's everything for this month. It ended up being quite a productive reading month, which I'm quite pleased with. It's a good way to start the year, I think. I hope all of you have had as good reading months as I have, and I will speak to you later. Bye!